Let's just start with, because I think there's a little bit of mystique around Unruly. Let's just start with what you guys are and what you do.
Sure. So Unruly is a video ad tech company. We focus on helping brands get their videos watched, tracked, and shared across the open web. And the open web, let's talk definitions. Open web would be a web outside of YouTube.
Okay.
And now predominantly Facebook as well as they grow.
So there's a pretty heavy social slant there.
Social video is what we focus on.
Okay.
And social video is defined as a user-initiated video that's purchased on a cost-per-view basis. So it puts the user in control, whether they want to opt in to watch or opt to skip, but it puts the user in control of kind of their video experience.
So you're monetizing 100% on a performance basis?
Yes, it's because it's all purchased on a cost per view, or some people call cost per engagement, but cost per view basis. So similar to search, right?
Okay.
Somebody sees it, you pay, they don't see it, it's, no one pays.
So I think it's interesting because, having known you guys for a little while, I mean, there's an interesting sort of paradox in that you're monetizing your portfolio on a performance basis. But if you look at the greatest ROI from a lot of your media, it's up funnel, right? It's purchase intent, it's recall.
Yes.
It's like, that's where it's performing because the perception of it being shared or pure earned media having an ambient sort of lift, right? Talk me through that because that feels like a pretty sweet recipe.
Sure. So people come to us to get those videos, as I said before, watched, tracked, and shared. And people meaning brands and agencies, right? Publishers will come to us for the monetization, but that's a separate piece. So when brands are coming to us, what they want to figure out is, I have a piece of content. It might be a 6-second Vine video. It might be a 15 or a 30 that I'm trying to kind of put online. It might be a 3-minute piece of content. What we're doing is we're helping them understand, first of all, what's actually in the asset through predictive analytics. We can predict the accuracy of sharing, and sharing is essentially earned media. But we can predict with an 80% accuracy how likely something is to share for a brand.
By audience profile or just by content genre?
By what the content is specifically.
Okay.
So it's copy testing, you could call it in a traditional sense, right?
Okay.
So, but we're copy testing. So once they know that, then there's a bunch of other things you're going to look for. You're going to look for kind of the, why do people feel a certain way? Or why would someone share it? And if you understand those two things, what you can then start to do is strategically adjust them in order to get greater virality of the video asset that you have. And so we
I feel
take
itchy whenever you say that.
Virality?
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say it. We often, as I mentioned in the beginning, we talk sharing, right? Why sharing? Sharing is engagement, right? Engagement, as you and I had talked earlier, engagement can be kind of a vague term. But at the end of the day, what brands are telling us, and certainly what we're hearing, is it's not enough that someone saw it, and I can track that, but they want to know, was someone inspired enough that they passed it on to someone else? And what we have done our own research, and we've done a lot of studies in this area. What we have found is that if a video is passed from one person to another, it's likely that 33% of people will talk to someone about it. 28% of people will go visit a homepage. 18% said they actually searched. 9% declared that they actually purchased the product. So
why are brands still creating ads? Why don't they just double down on branded content and stop buying media?
Well, they're buying a lot more branded content, that's the conversation. All of the numbers, and there was some discussion earlier about traditional ways of doing things. If you've been collecting information and doing things a certain way for 30 years, right, or 40 years, you don't want to mess with it because you know what the expected outcome is.
The predicted outcome is predictable, right? I mean, that's safe.
Very astute.
We all like
right?
certainty, right?
We like certainty, right? And what we are developing are strategies based on certainty, not strategies based on hope. And if you look at social media from kind of the early days, a lot of it was strategies based on hope. Let's post and pray, right? We'll put it up on YouTube and see what happens. Well, those days are over. And there was a comment made earlier, which I don't agree with. Someone had said that the tools for kind of the art of creative aren't there. I would tell you they're there. We have them, and that's what we're helping brands and agencies understand: is what do you have from an art standpoint, and how likely is it that you'll get more earned media?
Right. But let's be clear. Your toolkit, from what I just heard with the copy test, is not just technological. It's quantitative and qualitative testing as well. I mean, that's old school, right? Like that's throwback creative optimization.
Right.
So it sounds like you're not just, basing it on algorithms, but there's a little bit of a human hand in here.
So the part of that, so that's the testing product. There's three things we do. We distribute media, we test it, and then we have a longitudinal analytics tool that lets people look at the history of their video performance over time and compare to competitors. But behind all of that is the fact that we've collected data on, now we're up to 1.3 trillion videos that we've got the sharing behavior on. And so that is absolutely technology in terms of taking the tech, building the largest data set in the world of shared data, right, shared video information,
right,
and then building an algorithm, which we have done, which allows us then to have the 80% confidence in predictions.
So is it formulaic? From a format perspective, when we talk about, we talk about storytelling, right? Like the narrative, the creative arc, I mean, the story arc, et cetera. Like,
Sure.
I mean, is it formulaic? Is there no more art? Is it really just science?
It's a combination of both. And there still has to, each brand has something that it stands for. And so you can't take one single, I'll give you a great example, humor, right? Super Bowl's coming up, right? We're going to see a lot of funny commercials on the Super Bowl. I'm just guessing. But we have seen there's some brands that they don't necessarily stand for humor, right? And if you look at what Budweiser has done specifically 2 years ago with Brotherhood, man meets horse, and last year they followed that up with Puppy Love, puppy meets horse. Those were very nostalgic, emotional ads. Now that works for that brand. But if you're GoDaddy, you're going to pick an entirely different strategy. And if you're Chrysler, you'll pick a different strategy. And that's where the art comes in. Where the science comes in, it's the ability to understand how these assets work, identify where they should be placed, place them out on the open web, and then watch the paid media investment pay off in terms of earned media value on top.
So do you look at social as, if you look at the sort of the dissection of paid, own, and earn, right? If we look at those buckets, is social about extension or is it just a separate channel?
So social in part of the context of I'll just do paid and earned for now.
Yeah, I mean,
owned,
yes.
But in terms of paid and earned, it's part of the whole package. Social as a separate. Social enables the earned portion. At least that's how Unruly looks at it. Social enables more earned. So people will come to us with paid and say, here's the investment we'd like to make, and what type of result do we think we might be able to see within some guidelines. And that's what we're doing. So I don't think you can isolate social as something separate.
But you're qualifying pre-roll or 15s on social platforms as paid, correct?
Yes. Yeah, whatever it might be, and we're not really in the pre-roll biz. Skippable pre-roll, yes.
That I understand, right?
Just to be clear.
But it's originally created content by brands.
Correct. Right? Brands create the content. We don't create the content. We test it, we distribute it, and then we are able to kind of report back in kind of a closed loop as a single organization that can work with our brands and agency partners to give them that visibility. On the publisher side, and I mentioned publishers before. We launched. We've had a lot of stuff going on this year, but a couple of months ago we launched a product called Unruly X. And what Unruly X is, it allowed us to use our kind of technical chops to create new inventory that never existed for publishers. So in a news feed, it's a mobile-centric product. So if you think about kind of like a Facebook news feed, we've recreated that for the open web, right? The open web is almost 1 billion websites that are out there, right? And it's blogs, and it's folks like Yahoo, and it's folks like Lost in E Minor, there's
everybody but YouTube.
Everybody but YouTube and Facebook, right? But essentially what this does is it creates a news feed, and the technology then allows it in a unit, and it could have been a unit that ran on desktop and it's automatically transitioned to actually be injected into a news feed, creating a native experience for people and something that looks and mimics what the environment that it's going into.
So
that's called Unruly X.
Okay.
It's a source of supply for people.
So the last question I want to ask is, do you feel like you guys are getting a lot of lift just because of the fact that typically still, if you look at programmatic as the channel where spend is growing the greatest right now, right? Because it's 50s and 30s, there's no long form content. You typically can't, it's not easy to buy sort of anything but a 15 and 30 in a lot of those platforms. And I'm sure that's going to change, but point in time, do you think you guys are getting, platforms like yours, because there's still a lot of odd form, odd duration content? I mean, or is it because brands really want to double down on storytelling?
Brands absolutely want to double down on storytelling. And what they're finding is it's very, very hard to get much of a message out in 15 or 30 seconds. And again, we take 15s and 30s, so the length is kind of agnostic to us. But generally, what you're finding is brands want to drive a deeper relationship with their customers, whether it's a heavy purchaser or a light purchaser, right? There's different strategies that they'll take to do that. But essentially what they want is they want to be able to have their message out in environments that they know are going to drive either sales or drive some type of brand equity metrics. And that's what we're focusing on, and that's an important thing. I mean, I think the word programmatic has been brought up so many times today. It's almost like we built out a whole programmatic stack. That's how we deliver.
I agree.
But that's kind of like table stakes now. You have to do that.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, Richard.
My pleasure.